Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also voted against the bailout package, and I voted against the bailout package because I believe that it did nothing to prohibit the types of practices we're going to discuss today. It provided no real relief to communities or homeowners who are impacted as a result of these practices. And I believe that there's no real understanding of what the requirements will be for administering such a program as we look to the underlying mortgages and the number of housing and housing units that's there. Also, I don't believe that the value is ultimately going to be there when they take a look at the mortgages and the mortgage security-backed securities that they're going to be acquiring. Dr. Westcott, you said that you gave us about 4 or 5 points as to how this happened: easy credit, housing prices escalating, securitization of mortgages, houses becoming ATMs, and Ms. Minot, you indicated also excessive CEO compensation. Well, I'm from Ohio, and we're one of the leaders, unfortunately, in the area of foreclosures, and I want to tell you a little bit about what our experience is, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. In 2001, I was serving as mayor for my community, and then City Commissioner Dean Lovelace, who was a leader in our community of trying to advocate for people who were victims of predatory lending, brought to the attention of the City Commission and ultimately legislation which we passed but were not able to enforce, attempting to prohibit predatory lending practices in our community. We then began working with the Miami Valley Fair Housing Center in our community to work directly with people who were impacted. And our community in the past 2 years has had 5,000 foreclosures on an annual basis in a county of about 500,000 people. The state of Ohio, I believe, is clipping along at about 80,000 plus of foreclosures. And Dr. Westcott, we're not seeing the housing price escalation as the problem. Ohio is not a state that saw wild fluctuations in housing values. In fact, the Miami Valley Fair Housing Center, Jim McCarthy, the director there, tells me that this is what we experience. Houses that are probably valued between $75,000, $80,000, people who found the American dream, who got a traditional lending product, were convinced to refinance their house by unscrupulous lenders, predatory lenders, subprime lenders, convinced that the property value was worth $100,000, many times capitalizing the fees, giving the ultimate homeowner a small portion of the cash in the refinancing. The homeowner then facing many times interest rates or payments schedules that they're either not familiar with or not prepared to make. In any event, finding perhaps hard economic times or other circumstances where they realize that the value of the property is below the actual mortgage value. And ultimately, this property going through foreclosure becomes abandoned in my community, sitting with a leaking roof, broken windows, and many times is now worth $20,000, requiring tens of thousands of dollars for it to even be habitable. We're seeing that scourge around our community, and when I see that, I don't see bad loan choices. I don't see people who just were stretching for the American dream but could not afford it. I see someone having stolen the American dream, where there was a homeowner and a family that was sitting there that were convinced, to them, what they thought was the most regulated transaction in our country, protected by the federal government and rules and regulations, caught in a cycle of refinancing. But there's someone who knew. The person who originated this loan knows that the value of the property isn't there. They know that this homeowner is not going to be able to make it. And ultimately, as we now know, they take that loan, securitize it, and sell it back, likely to the bank that had the first mortgage to begin with that wouldn't have given them a loan like that. Now, again, I believe that these people stole. And I believe it was systematic stealing at such an unbelievable and grand scale that it is going to be very difficult for us to unwind this. In those circumstances, I'd like your thoughts on that very process.
Mr. Turner, you described very eloquently a second type of housing problem that we're having in this country. We really have two housing problems. We have the credit-oriented problem that is heavily focused in Florida, California, Las Vegas, and so on. And because this part of the economy, because the housing sector of the economy started weakening, we've actually eaten into real disposable income. We've hurt consumer spending across the country. And what that's done is that's lowered demand for automobiles, for industrial goods, and so on. And that's the core part of the problem in the state of Ohio. It's the same in Michigan. These are regions that have lost hundreds of thousands of industrial jobs, as you well know. And so the fundamental problem in Ohio is the loss of jobs and the the fact that many people just don't have the income they did 2 years ago or 4 years ago.
Mr. Turner, I want to repeat that one of the most important factors in creating this problem was pay plans that rewarded the executives on the basis of the number of transactions rather than the quality of transactions. And as I said the last time I spoke to this committee, of course we could never pay Congress what you're worth, but if we were paying you based on the number of laws rather than the quality of the laws, I think you see what the result would be. And when we created these pay packages so that they were benefited by just generating as many transactions as possible, chopping them up, sending them all over the place in a form that could no longer be valued accurately, to me, that is one of the key sources of this problem.
Well, as we talk many times about falling housing prices, it's going to be interesting when we actually get into these mortgage-backed securities and look at these mortgage transactions, because I think we will find that many of these loans were given on housing prices where the value wasn't there to begin with.
I agree, and I understand that in some cases even the title searches were not completed.